introduce us a little bit. Let me go in here. We come from the East Coast, so you'll obviously recognize this as a map of the United States. We're over here now. Mitzi and I are from Pennsylvania. So on Saturday, we hopped on a plane, flew to Chicago, and then from Chicago out to Seattle. So we're out here. So here's Pennsylvania, and I want you to look down in this corner, and I'll show you where we're from. So we're from a town called Landenberg, Pennsylvania, which is just a few miles above this state that's abbreviated DE. You know what DE, the DE state is? It's the second smallest state in the United States. Any idea? No guess? It's Delaware. So, in fact, I work a day job, I work a full-time job in Delaware, and the states are so jammed together back on the East Coast, I can hop in my car in about 5 to 10 minutes. I can be in this state, Maryland, and I can hang a left and drive over into Delaware in about 15 minutes, and then across the river in about another 15 to 30 minutes into New Jersey. So within an hour, I can be in 4 states. Can't do that here. You familiar with Hershey chocolate? You like chocolate? Yeah. Hershey, Pennsylvania is not far away, and that's where Hershey originated. And it's fun to go visit Hershey because the street lights over the streets are shaped like Hershey chocolate kisses. So it's kind of neat to see that. And we fly out of Philadelphia, I may have just mentioned that. Or we can choose to come down here and fly out of Baltimore. So we have a couple choices where we fly out of when we travel. Now, I'd like to read you this book. This was my first book, but as I'm reading it, I need your help. So I'd like you to watch for a dog with a red collar, the number 9, and cowboy boots. Got it? Dog with number and okay, good, very good. Okay, here we go. Chase, Mommy called. It's time to leave for Grandma's house. Chase charged into the kitchen with his backpack and suitcase. Okay, Mommy, I'm ready. Did you pack everything I laid out for you? Chase nodded. Yup, I packed everything. Now there really is a Chase. I used my son's name in the book, so this is Chase. He's obviously not 6, he's 22 now. He's standing by his sister, that's Hannah. And Chase is in university. He was in the band for a couple of years. He's not now, but he's almost ready to finish college, so we're happy about that. What was the first? Dog with the red collar? Got it? Now, I wrote the words for this book, so I'm the author. What's the person called that does the artwork? Illustrator. Very good. The illustrator for this book was Kim Sponicle. She lives in New Jersey. Whenever she gets the chance, she likes to sneak a picture of her real dog into the stories. She has a Westie, so she snuck her dog into my story, and I think that's really cool. I like that. As Mommy set her cup of coffee on the saucer, she saw the corner of Chase's favorite quilt sticking out of his backpack. Did you pack your quilt too, Mommy asked. Chase frowned, but Mommy, I don't have a quilt. Mommy's eyebrows raised in surprise. You don't? Nope, Chase said with a little grin. You might think I have a quilt, Mommy, Chase said, but really it's a busy, busy airport for all my airplanes. The 9. You got the 9? Do you remember the real Chase? You remember that? Guess what his favorite number is? 9. We were able to sneak that into the story. I don't have a quilt. I have a huge racetrack for my fast cars. Now, when the illustrator, Kim, was ready to work on the artwork for this story, she said, do you have any quilts that you would like me to use as the basis for the artwork? And so we ran around the house taking pictures of all of Mitzi's quilts, and the illustrator, Kim, liked the one we're going to show you. When I'm a superhero, I have my cape. And when I'm a secret agent, it's my shield to make me invisible. This may not be the most colorful artwork in the book, but it's my favorite. And it's my favorite because when I wrote these words, and when I'm a secret agent, it's my shield to make me invisible, I had no idea how would the artist do that. And yet in this, you can see Chase, you can see his quilt, and yet he's still invisible. And so I think it's the most creative piece of art in the book. When I'm fighting huge fire-breathing dragons, I have my thick armor to protect me. It's not a quilt, it's a deep, dark cave, and I'm a brave explorer. When I wrote this page, I was thinking about when my brother and I were young. We'd drag out my mom's afghans and blankets and quilts, and we'd spread them across tables and chairs, and we'd pretend they were forts and caves. Did you guys ever do something like that? Yeah. Yeah, so that's what I was thinking of. Sometimes it's my very own flying carpet when I fly high over old magical cities. Cowboy boots, you got them. Or it's my saddle when I'm a cowboy riding on my horse during a starlit night. Now I thought you'd like to see what I saw for each page as the artwork came. So Kim, the illustrator, would send me sketches for each page. And so this was this pencil sketch that I received. And sometimes on some of the pages she would have things labeled. Like she might say, blonde hair, green tree. And it was my opportunity to make changes. Now Kim did everything in watercolor, so the next thing that can come was her paintings. So this was her illustration from that sketch. And as she was doing these, I was working in our basement one Christmas holiday, and I found the real Chase's favorite piece of clothing. And it was, show it for me, this boot. We don't know where that one's at right now, but when Chase wore these all the time, he'd sleep in them, he'd wear them every day. And now you may not be able to tell well, but they're gray. What color are they up here? They're brown. And so we asked Kim, is there any way you could make those boots gray so that it would have the real Chase's boots in there? She said, well, I've already done the painting. It will cost you extra. I didn't really want to spend more money. So she said, okay, let me see what I can do. So she scanned her artwork into the computer. She did it all digitally and changed the color to gray. So in the book, you'll see this, but if you come to my house to see the real artwork, you'll see brown boots. It's my tent when I'm on a safari in Africa. See, Mommy, it's not just a quilt. That's good to know, Mommy said. When I made it, I thought it was just a quilt. I'm glad you told me. I can see that it's much more than just a quilt. Mommy gave Chase a big hug. As Mommy held out her hand to count on her fingers, she said, in that case, maybe you should get, count along with me here, your busy airport, your racetrack, your superhero cape, your secret shield, your thick armor, your deep dark cave, your flying carpet, your saddle, and your safari tent. How many? 9. What was Chase's favorite number? 9. Just in case you need them at Grandma's house tonight. Chase's smile went all the way to his eyes. I already did, Mommy. They're right here in my backpack. Then he added, besides, Mommy, you know I can't sleep at night without my quilt. The end. So that was my first quilt. Well, I'll turn it over to Mitzi and let her show you some quilts.
We also speak to quilt guilds, and one of the questions they always had was at the end of the book, the one where Chase is wrapped with the quilt. Do you want to have that?
Okay.
So I designed this quilt to go with it, and I call it Chase's quilt. I'm going to show you the same quilt pattern, but with some different colors to it. This one has pink sashing in it, but it's the same pattern. stories behind this was we went on a fabric shopping trip and got the boutiques. Nancy got an embroidery machine, and so she did the tea and coffee cups because we get together for tea and coffee. Susie always does everybody's name in the quilts. This one has some sewing notions here, and then this one has church and dogs. We have 3 dogs, Brahma, Dixie, and Riley, and their names are actually quilted into here. Dixie's is right here. And it has the 50 and kind of friendship and things to mark my 50th birthday. This book here is also Tiffany's, and she's the one with the brown baby quilt that I had. So when Tiffany got married, the fabrics in this came from a dance recital she did in college, and it was curtains I made for the recital. So that's where all the fabrics are coming. That's a special meaning to it. It is hanging in the arbor there behind where Tiffany and James took their wedding vows. So this is that quilt. When Tiffany was expecting her first grandchild, I told her that I would help her make a quilt for her. And so now Tiffany's a 4th generation quilter, and this is Scout's baby quilt. Scout's name comes from a book, To Kill a Mockingbird, which you probably will read before you finish high school. Our Tiffany's a very, very avid reader. She loves to read all the time. She would even take the books by my nightstand while I was reading them and take them and go read them. This is Scout up here. This is Chase, all folded up in the dollhouse. The dollhouse here belongs to Hannah, who's 25. Scout's up in the top, and that's Dixie there in the corner, and Scout over there. So I made the animal blocks in this one, and Tiffany made the, it's called a 9-patch, the square blocks in it. So this is Scouty's baby quilt. We have to borrow them from her when we travel. As soon as I get home, I have to return them to them. Now Tiffany knew that since we were traveling, she said, well, would you like to take a quilt that she made? Because she was proud of making one of her first quilts. We have a grandson named Wells. He will turn 3 this month, and this is the baby quilt that Tiffany made for Wells.
Okay, I wrote a sequel to Just a Quilt, and in it, the little girl thinks that the quilt blocks Mommy is working on looks like spiders, friendly spiders. You may see them there in the book. And so I asked Mitzi, could you design a quilt that has spiders in it? So the quilt we're going to show you goes with that book, which is called The Mess.
Now this quilt here, I did not do the quilting on it. A girl in our quilt guild did it. She's about 20, 21 now, and so it's very intricate, all the quilting on the back of it. She has what's called a long arm business, a big machine for quilting, and this is how she's paying for college, is doing long arm quilting for others. So here are friendly spiders.
Okay, I think we may have a few minutes for questions. Do you have questions for Mitzi or I? Yes. What was my first book? It was Just a Quilt. It was this one. This is the second edition of it, but this was the first book. I have 6 books out now. I'm working on 3 right now. So with a little luck, I'll have some more books. But I have 6 published right now. I'm in. Oh, good question. I never planned to. I'm not a quilter. What I do for a living is I'm a scientist. I work for the DuPont company. I went to college and studied chemistry. I went on to graduate school and got my PhD. That means in certain scientific meetings, I can be called Dr. Keys. And I run a small business in DuPont, in fact. But what I love is creativity. So I began thinking, what can I do to connect what I like, creativity, with what she likes, quilting, and that book is what came out. Down here, yes. Is it hard to make the books? Yeah, in a way it is. Now, it's easy to write stories. I love to write stories. It's hard to get accepted to be published because there's lots of really good writers out there. So you have to keep trying, keep trying. I get lots of rejection letters, but that's okay. It forces me to get better all the time. Right there. How long does it take to make a quilt? The books. Okay. For a picture book, they're not very long, so they're pretty easy to write. But then I spend a lot of time researching every single word that goes into it. From the time I finish writing the story until it comes out like this is about a year and a half. So it takes a while. If I do a picture book, chapter book, which I've written 2 chapter books, it takes me about 9 months to a year just to write the book. So it's a long time. Lots of editing. So if your teachers ask you to edit one another's stories, do it. For a picture book over here called Charles T. Cub, I remember this one. I edited this one 47 times. So it's a lot of work to get it just right. Yeah, right there.
The big one, about 6 months.
Right there.
I know it was around.
The question was, do you know when you first started to quilt?
I know that I was around, so I'm sitting here, I always try to remember. I remember playing with Mother's button box before school. There was no kindergarten when I started school, so it was first grade. But I do know that I was sewing with Mother before school, and I was sitting here trying to remember a while ago, and I thought, I do remember making Barbie clothes by hand too, and I had to go back and think who was living here at the time. That was probably like 3rd grade and stuff, but I also have a lot of quilt blocks that I did when I was young, so somewhere in those before school and up through elementary school, it's definitely somewhere.
How are we doing on time?
We have 2 minutes.
Okay, maybe one more question. Right there? Okay.
I probably made between 40 and 50. One of the things with quilters is we tend to give away our quilts for special occasions and don't always keep them, but I think I've probably done it between 40 and 50.
Right, maybe we have one more. Right there. Right there.
My first one to make from the classes, it would be Tiffany's baby quilt there,
The
but
one that's all beat up, the
the
brown one.
brown one that's falling apart. But I know at home I have some quilt blocks that were stars, and I was so young that the points that are supposed to come together in the middle, they don't match. And I thought of taking them apart, but I don't want to because that shows where I started at from a long time ago. So I still have the blocks, but that one's not finished.
I think we'll have to end. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning, and over to you. All right, thanks.
Give our author a round of applause.